It is John Gibson. We're back, Angry Rich and I. We've got one of our best guests that you could possibly imagine, Roger Stone, the legendary political consultant for Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, and of late Donald Trump, author of the book, The Making of the President 2016, How Donald Trump Orchestrated a Revolution, and star of the documentary movie Get Me, Roger Stone. So, Roger, welcome to the program, first of all.
Great to be here.
Secondly, I wanted you to just comment, if you would, on the news this morning that, both CNN and MSNBC were giving constant coverage to an anti-Trump rally in New York City that we now know was organized by Russians who were indicted by Robert Mueller in that indictment last week. Constant coverage all day long.
I think what this shows is that CNN and MSNBC were colluding with the Russians. You know, with the indictment of 13 Russians, including a caterer, Robert Mueller has now literally indicted a ham sandwich. I mean, there's zero chance any of these Russians are going to be extradited to this country for trial. So this was a show indictment to prop up the sagging public relations of Robert Mueller, who, despite the fact that he has spent millions of our tax dollars, has produced no evidence of collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russian state. This is a face-saving device, but he's now set a precedent. Where's the indictment of Christopher Steele, a foreign national who is interfering in our elections? Where's the indictment of the various Ukrainian players who were heavily trafficking with Hillary Clinton's campaign to interfere with our elections? This is a slippery slope for Mr. Mueller.
Do you think there's any chance that he would turn around and indict Christopher Steele and the Fusion GPS, and for that matter, the Hillary campaign, for colluding with Russians to produce that dossier?
If I thought he was an honest prosecutor, the answer would be yes. Unfortunately, I think he's a partisan. He is, he's the Lord High Executioner for the deep state. He's done dirty work for the Clintons and the Bushes. It's not that he has an allegiance to one party. He has an allegiance to the permanent political establishment that still can't get over the election of Donald Trump and seek somehow through this investigation to undo what they couldn't do at the ballot box, remove Donald Trump. So I don't expect anything from Mr. Mueller. Like my father used to say, what do you expect from a pig but a grunt?
So over the weekend, Donald Trump, his first reaction to the indictments of these Russians and the Russian caterer, the guy known as Putin's cook, was to say, okay, well, they said there was no Americans involved and it didn't affect the outcome of the election. He seemed pretty satisfied with it. And then he watched a lot of TV commentary and then he got mad. Do you think he should have been mad?
Sure, because, see, what Mueller's counting on is that most Americans don't read past the headline. So they see the headline, 13 Russians indicted for collusion or for interference in the American election, say, aha, you see, they caught Trump. But that's not what the indictment says at all. So I think it needed the context that the president put it in. And I think it kind of, it explodes the myth. I also think, as you pointed out earlier, how convenient that Mueller drops this indictment on the same day we learn that the FBI had leads to this obviously mentally ill shooter who killed people in a Florida high school, pardon me. In other words, using one story to block another. The epic failure of the FBI in case after case of these horrific shootings is really getting manifest. The president needs to fire the FBI director and hire somebody who can clean that agency out.
As you say, I thought that was a kind of a smelly coincidence myself. I mean, are you saying, because you know this, the operation of the permanent government better than I do, that maybe Christopher Wray called up Mueller, who was former FBI director, and said, I got a real problem. My guy screwed up this Florida thing, and I got to admit it. Can you drop some news that helps?
Entirely possible. We know, based on public reports, that the FBI was considering putting out a document to contradict the Nunes memo, which showed, I think, pretty definitively that the Obama Justice Department and the Obama NSA used what they knew was a fabricated document as the legal rationale for surveillance of the Republican candidate for president of the United States. Kind of makes Watergate look like small potatoes. The president could have fired Director Wray that day. He's Chris Christie's butt boy. He's not loyal to the president. He's loyal to the FBI establishment. It was a lousy appointment to begin with, kind of up there with Jeff Sessions, if you ask me. This president needs a house cleaning at the CIA, at the FBI department.
Okay, well, let me count those again. DOJ, FBI, and you say CIA too? You think Pompeo's dropping the ball?
Well, Pompeo keeps insisting that Julian Assange is a Russian asset. No, Mr. Director, he is not. That's a lie. Either prove it or stop saying it. John, when they say we believe with a high degree of confidence, that's code words for we don't know anything. When they say it is our assessment, that means they're guessing or projecting what they want you to believe. Julian Assange is a journalist. Yes, he publishes classified information, like the New York Times, like the Washington Post, like the Wall Street Journal. Yet Pompeo and Sessions want him to be prosecuted. Isn't it funny that they're doing this at the same time this movie is out, The Paper, glorifying the Washington Post for publishing classified, purloined information regarding the origins of the Vietnam War? Can't have it both ways. Pompeo, who I liked as a congressman, thought he was kind of a, Freedom Caucus-oriented conservative Republican, really become a captive of the mandarins at the CIA. He's concerned. Rosenstein signed off on one of the requests for the wiretaps justified by the dossier. Ding, you're fired. Period. End of story. I don't know why he's still there, particularly since he is the U.S. cover-up of Uranium One, which is why I've said consistently, including on this show, the best way for the president to succeed is to demand the appointment of a special prosecutor for Uranium One. The four people under immediate investigation would be Mueller, Comey, McCabe, and Rosenstein. Checkmate.
Speaking with Roger Stone, of course. So the president tweeted that Vladimir Putin must be, and to quote him directly, laughing his ass off. Is that your assessment as well?
Sure, because Putin is clearly aware of the fact, for example, that our country spent millions of dollars to effectuate the election of Boris Yeltsin in the Russian election. We interfere with elections all around the world. That's what the CIA does. So our mock horror regarding what I view as pretty ineffective and ham-handed efforts by the Russians to affect our election is kind of laughable. I mean, at the end of the day, I think Boris and Ivan needed to justify their expense accounts somehow. So they run this campaign, which seems to be all over the map. We're pro-Bernie Sanders. We're pro-Trump. We're anti-Trump. We're anti-Hillary. They spent more money and more effort after the election than they did before, largely with anti-Trump messages. So at a minimum, whatever they did was muddled and ineffective.
Roger Stone. Check out Roger's book, The Making of the President 2016, How Donald Trump Orchestrated a Revolution. Roger, it's always great to have your time. Thank you very much for making time for us today.
Well, we covered a lot of ground. It's always great to be with you.
Yeah, we did, and that's why we should probably replay the whole thing. I'll try to get the guys in Minnesota to re-rack it. We'll run it again. Roger, thanks a lot. That's so Angry Rich, congratulations. It's always a great booking when you get Roger Stone.
You know you like a guest when you're falling down laughing and and getting good information at the time.
Yeah, I know.
He literally indicted a ham sandwich. A line.
Or a bowl of borscht. It is true. It's that weird thing that Putin's caterer is the guy who got this Russian, troll farm up and running, and he's Putin's favorite because Putin likes his restaurant. Weird. Speaking of weird, do we need to get into the Fergie thing right after this break?
Sure.